the easier it gets.
So let's talk about 20 years later. It's a 28 years later week, y'all. It's 20 years later release, and I think that's all we're going to be talking about this week in preparation for it. Very excited for this one, and let's get into it. So this is the upcoming film directed by Danny Boyle, written by Alex Garland, who of course worked on 28 Days Later. The film stars Jodie Comer, you have Aaron Taylor Johnson, Ralph Fiennes, and also Jack O'Connell's in this one. And that's who we're going to talk about today, as you can see from the title of the video right here. Yesterday we talked about the Alpha and the Doctor, and tomorrow we will have a full theory video about what exactly this movie could be about, and then I'm gonna watch the movie on Thursday, so stay tuned for that. The film is a movie that comes basically 28 years after the rage virus incident that we saw in 28 Days Later, and it seems that there has been some adaptation here by not just the people and the survivors, right, but it seems that the infected as well have sort of become new and different now. And we talked about that yesterday, that the Alpha here, who is played by Chi Lewis Perry, seems to be more able to speak and to reason, as well as we see him with Dr. Ian Kelson in the images I showed in yesterday's video, who is played by Ralph Fiennes. And also Ralph is a very important character for the Bone Temple as well, because it seems he will be the one who takes Jodie Comer's Isla and also her son Spike to this temple for whatever the case may be. Now, one of the things we know about Isla is that she is a woman suffering from memory loss, and we're going to discuss all about that tomorrow's video. What I want to discuss today is Sir Jimmy Crystal, who is played by Jack O'Connell, and his sort of like little info we get about this character. And we haven't seen this character in the trailer either. It says a cult leader with a dark past. So what exactly does that mean? Well, Jack O'Connell and the team haven't really spoken much about this character. There was an interview where Jack O'Connell was talking about the film with GQ, where they asked him about the character and the unusual name that it has, and which he says, yes, Sir Lord Jimmy Crystal, he's a gas cunt. That's what he says. So pretty much saying, yeah, this guy's bad news, right? And we don't get much more of it than that, except that we do know that he is a cult leader with a dark past, and he doesn't elaborate much more on it in the interview. He just goes on to say, I don't know quite how to describe him yet, but thrilling to portray, that's for sure. He definitely exists in the dark pockets, certainly in contrast to anything I've ever played before. And I'm curious about that because we've seen Jack O'Connell play this very menacing role in Sinners. Now, this is possibly even before Sinners came out, I believe. So that's a thing right there. Yes, this was in April of 2025. So maybe we're saying Jack O'Connell's playing a much darker character than the Sinners character, which is going to be interesting to see, but we'll see. So we don't know much more of that yet. Now, Jack O'Connell's character of Sir Jimmy Crystal is said to be in the Bone Temple as well. And one of the things we have to note about Sir Jimmy Crystal's cult is that it is evident throughout the trailer with Jimmy being sort of written throughout. And also we have other characters in the movie that are part of the cult, including Aaron Kellyman, who is playing a character called Jimmy Inc., a member of the cult. Also, Emma Lard is playing Jemima, a member of Crystal's cult. So a lot of these people are named Jimmy for some reason, and I know so many people were wondering if that's because of Cillian Murphy's character of Jim. I don't know what that could possibly be. We do know that Cillian Murphy's character does appear in the second film, The Bone Temple, could possibly get a cameo by the end of this movie. We'll see what happens with that, but very, very excited about it. But also, the thing about it that I talked about in yesterday's video is, what if the infected are sort of like the antagonist at first, but then we quickly learn that this cult of Sir Jimmy is trying to do something even much worse, because of course the infected are infected with the rage virus, and yes, indeed they will kill and do whatever, but they're not really conscious all the way there, right? It's more of the humans, and we saw that in 28 Days Later, of course, with the soldiers in the third act. And I'm curious about how that's going to be in 28 years later. My question here is, possibly are like Sir Jimmy and all of these like cult members trying to harness this rage for whatever reason that may be? Cult could possibly be the bigger threat to the civilization. So one of the things that we also know about how cruel humanity can be, just from the rage leaks, which we talked about yesterday, is that NATO and the rest of the world in this universe have seemingly abandoned the UK. They're seemingly acting to the rest of the world that there is nothing else there, like no more humans are there and everybody's dead and it's just like a bunch of infected people, so we're just going to keep it closed off from everybody else. And we did see in the rage leaks that yes, indeed, 28 weeks later seems to be sort of soft canon of sorts, because there is talk about the rage virus sort of leaking into Europe, and the virus ultimately did leak into Europe, but they were able to sort of contain it and suppress it down, and it's completely gone, and it just stayed in the UK. And so now the question is, what is Sir Jimmy Crystal cult after, right? Well, from what I talked about in previous videos, it seems that Jimmy is in fact the young boy that we see at the beginning of the first trailer, who is with the other kids watching the Teletubbies. One of the darkest moments in a trailer, honestly. And then I think Sir Jimmy Crystal is going to be very much so impacted by this and maybe feel that everybody else let them down, their government and all of this, and ultimately is trying to fight back or attack, and is using maybe the infected as the sort of pawns of sorts. Maybe sort of how we saw the soldiers try to harness an infected soldier for their own amusement or for their own study, whatever the case may be. It seems like that to me, because we do see, because I watched 28 Days Later a couple of weeks ago, and they did show a scene in which we saw where the character of Spike and Jamie, the father and the son, go out to sort of explore the mainland, and they come across somebody who is hung up upside down, and they seem to be infected, and their blood is being collected in a bag as well, with the words Jimmy like inscripted onto their stomach. And I wonder if these people in this cult are sort of harnessing the blood for whatever reason that may be. Maybe they want to use it into weapons, maybe what they're after, and I think this is what maybe the cult is trying to achieve, is to create chaos throughout the world. They're trying to get out of the UK, and they're trying to go and sort of bring chaos to the world, because they feel that they were let go and that they were just left to sort of like rot, right? And they want to show the world this hate and this sort of like suffering that they had to endure for all of these 28 years. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing in this movie going to be unfolding, is that Sir Jimmy and his cult Jimmy want to go out and just wreak havoc and chaos around the world, and they're using the infected and their blood and all of that to do so. So that's what I think Sir Jimmy and his cult are after. I think that the involvement of NATO as well, we do see the NATO soldiers in the trailers. There's going to be some sort of like reason for them to come out here, and the reason I'm not too entirely sure what it's going to be, but I think the end goal for Jimmy will be to maybe get on those ships and to spread sort of quote unquote the gospel of rage. And, you know, it might be crazy. I don't know. That's just my theories, my thoughts on it. I haven't seen the movie. I'll be watching it on Thursday. But I think that that is what Sir Jimmy and his cult are trying to achieve right now, to spread this sort of gospel. There's a reason in the trailer they show us that priest and him trying to say, like, for his children to come to him when he's talking about the infected that are ravaging the church. That's just my opinion. Let me know yours in the comments down below. Full theory on everything about the movie tomorrow on Dr. Ian Kelson and the Alpha, Sir Jimmy Crystal cult, and the whole NATO thing. Those are three stories that I think are going to very much so be the main thing we see throughout this new trilogy. But as always, that is going to do it for me. Hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell. We're on the road to 50,000 subscribers this summer. Let's get to it. I'll see all of you next time. Stay safe, stay positive.